They needed a villain, so they carved one out of my silence, took my scars, and turned them into warnings, took my name, and turned it into a curse. Was never what they said I was, but they needed a beast, so they stitched one together with my rage, with my pain, with their lies. They called me dangerous because I refused to kneel. They called me unhinged because I spoke in truth, not obedience. They called me wicked because I stopped bleeding for people who sharpened knives behind their smiles. I gave them kindness. They twisted it into weakness. I gave them loyalty. They crushed it under boots. I gave them everything, and they spat on it like it was dirt on their pristine floors. So I stopped giving and started taking. They pushed me to the edge, then screamed when I learned to fly. They built a cage and lost their minds when I grew fangs inside it. I warned them, didn't I? Even a dog, when beaten enough, learns how to bite, and I learned how to devour. They painted me monstrous, so I became one, but not the kind that hides in shadows, the kind that owns them. Let them tremble, let them whisper, let them call me the devil, because I remember who I was before they rewrote my story with blood and venom. I was mercy, I was light, I was peace, but peace doesn't survive in a world that loves the sound of breaking bones. So I became what they feared, not because it was easy, but because it was the only way to survive. They thought they were ending me. They were summoning me. This isn't vengeance, it's revelation. This isn't madness, it's evolution. You call me unholy, I wear that like a crown. You call me heartless, then listen to the silence you left in its place. Let me remind you, you made this, you fed this, you unleashed this. I was never the monster. You just couldn't handle the mirror. And now that I've become what you fear, you'll never unsee me. Because I didn't break, I transformed. And monsters like me, we don't beg for forgiveness. We teach the world to remember our name. They leashed me, chained my name, threw bones of mercy and called it kindness. I was the obedient one once, tail down, eyes low, bleeding silently in the corner where they told me I belonged. And I obeyed. Because I believed them, believed I was too wild to be trusted, too loud to be loved, too broken to be free. So I bowed, I crawled, I played their little pet. But even dogs have teeth, even dogs remember the blood. They mistook silence for submission, but silence is where wolves sharpen their rage. Every insult they whispered, I swallowed. Every kick, every back turned, every fake smile, stored like ammunition. You see, a dog waits, but a wolf hunts. And one day, I stopped wagging, stopped waiting, stopped mistaking their chains for protection. The leash snapped, not by accident, by choice, by awakening. They called me ungrateful, said I changed. No, I returned to the beast I was before they broke me. I didn't grow cruel. I remembered I was never meant to be tame. They taught me fear, but I remembered hunger. They fed me scraps. Now I take thrones. They wanted obedience. I gave them a reckoning, because deep inside the mutt they kicked lived the shadow of a wolf they should have never provoked. And now no more barking, only silence, only teeth, only vengeance. Let them run. Let them hide. Let them pray to the gods they ignored when they played God with me, because I'm not coming back as a pet. I'm coming back as a legend. They told me to be sane, told me to smile politely as they buried me alive in expectations I never agreed to, told me to sit still while they strapped lies to my spine, and called it a backbone. I did, for a while. I did. I swallowed their rules, bit down on my own voice, choked on their normal, and it almost killed me. You think I lost my mind? No, I escaped it. Sanity was the leash, the muzzle, the padded cell they painted with soft colors and called peace. But it was never peace, it was silence. And silence, when it's forced, is violence. They dressed it up like virtue, obedience, submission, compliance, like a caged lion trained to purr while its roar rusted in the dark. But inside, the storm never stopped. Inside, the scream grew teeth. They called me mad the moment I stopped apologizing, the moment I stopped asking for permission to breathe, to speak, to exist. Funny, isn't it? You play by their rules, they ignore you. You break their rules, suddenly, you're the headline. They called it madness when I finally spoke the truth. Because the truth doesn't kneel. The truth doesn't beg. The truth burns. So let me be mad. Let me laugh in the ruins of your systems. Let me dance barefoot on the shards of your expectations. Let me scream in tongues that terrify your fragile little echo chambers. Because if this is madness, if this is what it feels like to finally be free, then may I never know sanity again. You worship your cages. I broke mine. You nurse your wounds. In secret, I wear mine like armor. You keep chasing approval. I stopped running. And when I stopped, I saw everything. I saw the truth behind the smiles, the rot beneath the gold, the cowards in suits, and the monsters in pulpits. And I laughed, because all this time, they were trying to fix me, patch me up, sand down the edges, make me acceptable, make me small. But I was never meant to be small. I was never meant to fit inside your rules, never meant to color inside your lines. I was made for the wild, for the chaos, for the storm. You see a madman, I see a liberated God. You see danger, I see awakening. I shed sanity like a skin, ripped it off with blood in my mouth and truth in my bones. And what rose in its place? Something real. You tried to save me, but I didn't need saving. I needed unleashing. So no, I'm not sane. I'm not balanced. I'm not calm. I am 1,000 fractured thoughts marching in unison. I am a scream that finally found rhythm. I am chaos curated, pain sculpted, and madness merciful. Because in madness, I found clarity. In madness, I found me. So go ahead. Label me, dismiss me, fear me. But know this, the next time you see me, you won't see a patient. You won't see a problem. You'll see what happens when the broken stop begging to be whole. You'll see what happens when mercy wears a smile, and that smile has fangs. Let them whisper. Let them point. Let them pray for the return of the version I buried. Because that version, that prisoner, is never coming back. Madness was the door, and I walked through it. Now I am free. Now I am fire. Now I am untouchable. They needed someone to blame. So they chose me. I was the silence when they screamed, the calm when they panicked, the one who took the fall so they could sleep at night. They buried their sins in my skin, tattooed their guilt into my back like I was born to carry it. And I did. God, I did. I held it all. The lies, the betrayals, the broken promises they whispered like prayers. I wore it all like armor until the weight became a second skeleton. I bled so they could call themselves innocent. I burned so they could stay warm. And still, they tied the rope. Still, they built the gallows. Still, they handed me the noose. With the same hands I once protected, I stood there, neck wrapped in their cowardice, eyes full of every truth they refused to face. And they looked at me like I deserved it, as if I wasn't the one who stood between them and the abyss, as if I wasn't the one who took the knife instead of them. Funny, isn't it? How the world crowns its martyrs with bullets. How it crucifies its protectors, then worships their corpses. They called me dangerous, but I was just a shield that finally snapped. They called me mad, but madness was just the sound of loyalty rotting. And when I screamed, they heard thunder. But it was truth. It was all truth. Because deep down, they knew. They knew I saw them. Knew I knew what they did. Knew I could expose it all. So they hated me wicked, because wicked is easier to burn. They turned my name into a warning, my silence into proof, my forgiveness into weakness. But I see it now. I see it all. They weren't afraid of what I would do. They were afraid of what I already was. The reckoning, the mirror, the one soul they couldn't rewrite. So they tried to hang me from a rope made of their own shame, tried to bury me under the dirt of their own regrets. But I am not the grave. I am the ghost, the consequence, the storm they thought they could outrun. And now I wear their noose as a crown, their shame as a sigil, their betrayal as my birthright. They made me a monster to sleep at night, but now I walk while they tremble. Let them remember I carried their sins, and they gave me a noose, but I never swung. I never fell. I learned to stand, even with the rope around my throat. And now I pull it tighter, not to die, but to break the chains. And when they ask what I became, tell them the one thing their lies could never kill, the one truth they'll never silence, the one name they'll never forget. They said I was too angry, too broken, too far gone to ever be saved. But what they never understood was that I wasn't waiting to be saved. I was waiting to awaken. You see, the fire they lit to destroy me, it became my altar. And from that altar, I rose. I was not broken. I was reborn, not as their version of good, not as their tamed, smiling puppet, but as something they never prepared for, a storm with memory, a shadow with vengeance, a God forged from everything they tried to bury. They built a world where pain meant silence, where suffering meant obedience, where the scarred were meant to kneel. And then they met me. I took every chain they ever wrapped around my throat and melted it down to forge a crown. They feared rage, so I became rage, sharpened into clarity. They feared rebellion, so I became rebellion, carved into prophecy. I was not made in love. I was made in fire, hammered by betrayal, sharpened by loss, and baptized in a silence so deep it screamed louder than any war cry. They say gods are born from light. Then tell me, why do they all crawl when the dark starts to move? I didn't lose my humanity. I let go of it because they never saw a man. They saw a threat. So I became one, the villain, the beast, the mad dog on the leash, too dangerous to let live. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. And when they couldn't tame me, they tried to erase me. But they forgot one thing. You can't erase what you fear. You only feed it. And they fed me well. Their hatred became my scripture. Their lies became my fuel. And every time they spit on my name, I wrote it deeper in stone. They pushed me into hell, but I found my throne there. And now they tremble because they finally realize it wasn't a demon they were fighting. It was their reckoning, their reflection, their end. The world needed a demon to unleash a God. So I became both. And now I choose who burns. I choose who kneels. I choose who walks out alive. They wanted a monster. I gave them a myth. Let them pray. Let them run. Let them remember this was never chaos. This was the resurrection of the one they should have never touched, of the soul they couldn't shatter, of the fire that didn't die. It simply waited to become divine. I was never your villain. I was your punishment, your reflection, your reckoning. You wanted someone to blame, so you took my silence and stuffed it with your guilt. You took my patience and painted it as rage. You called my clarity madness, because the truth I carried would have burned your world clean. You named me monster, but only after you fed me to your wolves. You named me traitor, but only after I stopped kneeling at your false altars. You needed a villain, and I made a better one than you ever feared. But make no mistake, I did not rise from your love. I rose from your ashes. I rose from the lies you told about me, the shadows you whispered my name into, the fires you lit beneath me thinking they'd burn me into nothing. They forged me instead. I became every nightmare you prayed wouldn't wake, every silence you couldn't explain, every consequence you thought would never come. You see, you crowned yourself the hero. You told the world you were saving it, but I was the one bleeding beneath your victories. I was the one buried under the cost of your lies. You don't get to call me wicked when I only became wicked to survive you. Every empire built on bones will answer to the dead. Every lie will echo back. Every hand that pointed at me will tremble when it sees what I've become. Because I didn't come for your forgiveness. I didn't come for your approval. I came to show you what happens when the villain you created remembers who they truly are. Not broken, not lost, not damned, awake. And now that I remember, now that I see it all, you'll wish I'd stayed your villain. Because I was never that. I was never the problem. I was never the mistake. I was the judgment. I was the silence before the fall. I was the price for every crown you wore in my blood. I was your reckoning, and I still am. They wrote my obituary before I even spoke. They buried me in silence, told the world I was gone mad, broken, cursed. But here I am, not crawling from the grave, but walking over it. Let this be the gospel they tried to burn. Let this be the scripture they swore could never exist. I am not their redemption. I am not their apology. I am the flame they can't put out, the prophecy they laughed at. Until it stood in front of them, they said I was evil, so I embraced it. They said I was lost, so I stopped following their maps. They said I was dangerous, and they were right. This is for the forgotten, for the ones whose names were never sung in temples, whose prayers were swallowed in the dirt, for the misfits, the cursed, the too loud, too bold, to dash much dash to dash handle. They branded us heretics. Because we didn't kneel, they branded us villains. Because we didn't beg. But now they recite our lines. Now they mimic our scars. Now they wear our madness like armor and pretend it was theirs all along. Let them steal the style. They'll never survive the story. Because this path, it costs. This throne, it bleeds. You want power? Then take the pain with it. Take the silence, the isolation, the nights you screamed into pillows and stitched your soul back together with your own hands. That's the price. And we paid it in full. So now, let them watch, let them whisper, let them bow. Because the villain they feared was the Messiah they needed. The hunter they chained is now the God they pray to, not for forgiveness but for mercy. This is the gospel they never wanted preached. This is the fire they swore they'd contain. But it's too late. I am untouchable. Not because I'm above pain, but because I drank it, bled it, turned it into my bloodline. They can't cancel what they didn't create. They can't kill what already died. They can't burn what became flame. So write this down in the bones of the earth. I was never theirs. I was never weak. I was never wrong. I was rising. And now I don't speak for revenge. I speak for the resurrection. This is not a warning. This is not a threat. This is scripture. This is gospel. This is the voice of the untouchable. Let them kneel. Let them tremble. Let them finally understand the villain never fell. He ascended.